Welcome to the Gastro Girl podcast. We bring together patients, experts, and health advocates who are all here to help you optimize your health. Here's your host, Jacqueline Garland.
Hey everyone, Happy New Year. I can't believe it's 2023 and we have an exciting year of programming coming up for you over the next several months and into the rest of 2023. But today I'm going to bring you an episode that we recorded live at ACG 2022 in Charlotte, North Carolina. This one is with Dr. William Chey of the University of Michigan, and we're going to talk about some of the highlights from the annual scientific meeting. We're also going to talk with Aonghus Shortt, who's the founder of Food Marble, a company that designed a little device that can measure the amount of gas in your breath that can determine what food you may be sensitive to. And he's got a great story of what led him to create this device. So we're going to hear from him in a minute. Hello, everyone. We are here at the ACG 2022 Annual Scientific Meeting, live from Charlotte, North Carolina at the Charlotte Convention Center. And we are here with Dr. William Chey, who is Chief of Gastroenterology and Hepatology at the University of Michigan. And he's also Senior Director of Nutrition and Behavioral Health Services at GIOnDEMAND. Welcome, Dr. Chey. It's so exciting to have you here today.
Well, thanks, Jackie. It's wonderful to be here and to talk to you a little bit today.
Yeah, and this is the first time we've done anything live from the annual meeting. And I'm so happy to hear what your thoughts are about the hottest topics for patients coming out of the annual meeting. What are some of your favorites?
Boy, there are a lot of cool things going on here. I'm going to really stick to just a few comments regarding abstracts that I'm really familiar with on new innovations. So first and foremost, most people probably don't realize that the FDA recently approved a vibrating capsule, of all things, for chronic constipation.
Are you serious?
Yes.
So you can swallow it and it'll help you somehow?
Yeah. So like
Love it.
a couple of times a day, it goes through this vibration cycle, which seems to stimulate the colon to contract and help people to move their bowels more frequently.
Well, that's interesting, especially if it's a motility issue, right?
Absolutely.
That's
and
awesome.
You know, the abstract that I'm primarily presenting during the meeting is on safety. And it turns out that there are really very few adverse events reported in association with using this capsule. In fact, the most common thing, not surprisingly, was that the patients could feel a sense of vibration, a couple times a day when they took the capsule, but really no appreciable problems with nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. So side effects that can be reported with some of the other medical therapies for constipation.
So basically, I could wake up if I had constipation. I mean, last year was the kiwi fruit.
Yes.
That was a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. So this year I could take a capsule. Is it ready for prime time?
Yeah. I mean, believe it or not, it's going to probably be commercially available sometime early next year, maybe January, February.
Oh, wow. So I could take this capsule. I would just drink it with water. And then how big is it?
It's about a little bit bigger than a big vitamin pill. So patients overall did really well with being able to swallow it. Really no significant adverse events that way. I mean, it is the size of a big vitamin pill, though.
That's not bad. So would they leave it in for a certain amount of time? I mean, obviously, if you have a bowel movement, it might come out. But Is it the goal for one bowel movement or does it stay in for a couple of weeks?
Yeah, no, things move through the GI tract not quickly, but within a day or two. So pretty much you swallow it. It does its thing a couple times a day, and then you poop it out. And of course, it's a one-time use capsule, so there's no recovery.
Oh, no, we don't want to use it again.
That's right.
That sounds so exciting. Now, it's probably too early to ask, is it covered by insurance? Do we get it at CVS, or is that too early?
It'll be prescription only, and, we'll have to deal with the same thing we deal with every new therapy for any condition, and that is insurance coverage, so we'll have to see exactly where this device plays out within the market and how difficult it'll be for patients to get. But the exciting news is it looks like it works for some patients and it'll be available soon.
That's so exciting. We love the new science. We love the fact that there's this new innovation. If you have constipation, keep a lookout for the vibrating capsule. And we're not being jestful. This is a really big deal. And we make light of things because these are embarrassing topics, but they're great innovations in science that really can help patients. So I know you're a big fan of digital apps, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about some of the new things on the block. There's some great science around some of these apps and tools.
That's the thing that's really striking me is that the companies that are developing a lot of the better known mobile apps for behavioral health anyway are doing their due diligence. In other words, are doing clinical trials to prove that their mobile apps actually provide value for patients. That's really exciting and really a little bit different than oftentimes mobile apps that are developed for health indications, where a lot of times they develop something that they think is a really good idea and throw it out on the market. A lot of these apps are really what we call evidence-based. So there are prescription apps, like, for example, within the context of IBS related cognitive behavioral therapy, that would be Mahana IBS. For gut directed hypnotherapy, there's one called MetaMe by a company called Regulora. And then there are also non FDA approved mobile apps that, by the way, the FDA approved mobile apps require a prescription. There are ones that are not FDA approved and don't require a prescription, like Nerva, for example, which is a gut directed hypnotherapy mobile app, and Zemity, which is also a non-FDA approved cognitive behavioral therapy app. So we're starting to see multiple players within these different disciplines for patients with IBS. And given the fact that there's so few behavioral therapists in the United States, it is really exciting that we have these mobile options for patients.
This is such great news. And, to go back to Nerva, GIOnDEMAND, of which you're on the leadership team, we just created a partnership to really make it even more accessible to gastroenterology practices nationwide so that they can reach their patients with this amazing app for gut-directed hypnotherapy. I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, for sure. And think about a way by which to amplify the impact. Hopefully, collaborations with our platform, GIOnDEMAND, will do just that, because it'll help gastroenterologists become more aware of these new digital tools that can really affect the outcomes of their patients.
And you're doing a great job along with the others on your clinical team to really help providers understand when and how to use these apps in practice, like who would make the best candidate to use something like gut-directed hypnotherapy.
No question. And, I'll tell you, a lot of times I feel like gastroenterologists are fighting with one arm tied behind their back, because we really receive no training on just what these techniques are, who they might be best suited for, who not to send for some of these applications. So a place like GIOnDEMAND is really an important resource for gastroenterologists to be able to learn those things that they traditionally wouldn't be taught.
Now, that's great news, and we're so fortunate to have you on the team. You've given us such great guidance on how to bring all these multidisciplinary players together. Now, I know you're so tapped into the science. I got to ask you, what are some of the abstracts we should be paying attention to?
Well, two other ones that are near and dear to my heart that I think are really interesting. One, staying on the constipation theme, has to do with the potential benefits of the low FODMAP diet. So remember, the FODMAP is an acronym that stands for fermentable oligomonosaccharides and polyols, which are sugars that your intestine can't break down and absorb. And because of that, they actually get fermented by bacteria to produce chemicals and gases, which can trigger symptoms in patients with IBS. So diets that reduce the intake of those FODMAPs have been associated with improvements in symptoms, but mostly it's really been thought to be a treatment for patients with IBS and diarrhea, not IBS and constipation.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we actually partnered with a commercial low FODMAP meal vendor called Modify Health, who, it turns out, through a collaboration that I helped them with, started to apply validated questionnaires to their patients, every patient that went on their program, before they went on the program and then after they went on the program. And so it allowed us to assess outcomes in patients not only with IBS with diarrhea, but also IBS with a mixed bowel pattern and IBS with constipation. So patients with constipated bowel habits and patients with a mixture of constipation and diarrhea. And guess what we found, which is that the low FODMAP diet seems to help with abdominal pain and bloating in patients with IBS and constipation. So
that's amazing. And you're sort of like the godfather of bringing the low FODMAP diet along with Peter Gibson to the US. And no one had ever heard of this. And here you are many years later talking about companies and products and services that have taken the science and evolved it into tangible things that patients can use. I'm fascinated by what Modify Health is doing. We hear all these meal plans that are all over the place shipped to your home, but what is really different and special about Modify Health, especially for patients that have IBS?
The other thing that we found in this study, which is not necessarily the finding that we emphasize the most, but it's a really interesting and important finding, is that patients that utilized this commercially available meal plan for the majority of their meals did better than patients trying to do the low FODMAP diet on their own. So in other words, getting these prepared meals that are really created and prepared to a specification that truly is low FODMAP was a lot more effective than patients trying to figure this out on their own. Because as you know, Jackie, a lot of patients find this really confusing.
It's incredibly confusing. I have IBS and it's very difficult. You get frustrated. You don't know where to turn. The low FODMAP diet is very complicated. That's why you and others have advocated working with a dietitian. Now we have a meal plan service and also gives you guidance. And aren't they really good about guiding the patient and really helping them understand why they should be having this and how to do it? And
yeah, one of the things that's definitely different about Modify Health is that their dietitians really do coach patients through the process of reducing FODMAP intake through the use of their meals. And they also provide as a general dietary resource. And that's really important because here's the thing, we've actually published this from our own research, is that patients with IBS are oftentimes restricting a wide variety of different types of foods. And their usual diet is oftentimes lacking in a lot of important elements of a nutritious diet. So they're starting off on the wrong foot. And just meeting with a dietitian, forget the low FODMAP diet, just meeting with a dietitian can help them to better understand how to eat a more nutritious diet.
That's so important because we're depleted. If we have to restrict certain foods or not eat them, we're going to be depleted in some area and then we can have other issues. I think it's so incredible to be talking about how far the science has come. Anything else we should be paying attention to? We can geek out a little bit if there's some science. I just love the science and love your interpretation.
One more that I think would be worth talking about because there's been a lot of controversy around something that's commercially available at the current time, and that is IgG antibody testing to identify patients with food intolerances. And there are a number of commercial tests out there, and frankly, the literature that is available as to whether or not this really works or doesn't work has been really questionable. So in collaboration with Harvard, a number of us have actually put our heads together in conjunction with a company named BioAmerica to evaluate whether a rigorously developed IgG antibody test allowed us to create elimination diets that were more effective than a sham or placebo elimination diet in patients with IBS.
Oh, wow.
And we're presenting data from this study with over 200 patients at the ACG annual meeting this year. In fact, it's the largest study evaluating an IgG-based elimination diet. And lo and behold, we actually have found that more individuals that were on the real diet got better in terms of their IBS symptoms than on the sham elimination diet. And the benefits were most notable for patients that had non-diarrhea IBS. So IBS-C and IBS mixed were the ones that were most likely to get better, which was a little bit of a surprising finding.
That's totally surprising. So do you think those, we talked a little bit about this with Beth, our dietitian, we see all these commercials for these food tests. What do you see coming down the pipe? Maybe not right now, but do you see those coming, that they're going to be helpful for patients eventually?
I do. I see a future in which we have a wide range of choices that extend far beyond the low FODMAP diet. The low FODMAP diet was so incredibly important because it really kicked open the door to the possibility that a diet intervention could be life-changing for patients with irritable bowel syndrome. And at this point, as you mentioned, Jackie, I started talking about this back in 2007 at this meeting. Actually, at this meeting was the first time I talked about it in 2007. And literally, people laughed at me now at this point,
Not me. I never laughed at you. I was always in your corner.
you were actually, you absolutely were always in my corner. But it's gratifying and a little bit frustrating in a different way that in 2022, you literally can't talk about IBS without talking about the low FODMAP diet. And what I want people to understand, in particular patients, is the low FODMAP diet is one potential solution, but we're finding others. And the exciting thing for patients to think about is the fact that over time, we're going to likely have multiple diet solutions for patients with IBS, and hopefully we'll get to the point where we can choose the right diet intervention for the right IBS patient that has symptoms related to eating a meal.
I can't wait for that to happen. I envision that too. You can target exactly what's bothering you, know the right things to eat, and not have these symptoms, and have a lot more happy patients, and well, hopefully not less patients for you to take care of, but you know what I mean. A lot of less suffering.
Absolutely.
So in closing, I know you're very busy. Any last words for the patients on what they should be paying attention to, or any big dreams that you have for the evolving science?
Yeah, I think the take-home message is it's a really exciting time. It's such an exciting time because finally healthcare providers are embracing this notion of integrated care. This notion that medications are an important part of the solution, but they're not the only part of the solution. This concept that diet and behavior play equally important roles to the use of medications. And then finally, this notion that hopefully we'll get from where we are right now, which is making our best guess on what the right therapy is for an individual patient, to having tests that allow us to choose the right treatment for the right patient. We're not there yet, but we're well on our way. So I think it's an incredibly exciting time for both patients and my physician colleagues.
And I 100% agree with you. And with you at the helm leading the charge and having a lot of people on your side, I think that's possible. So thank you so much for taking time to talking with us today, Dr. Chey. Hey everybody, welcome back. We are so excited. We're still here at ACG 2022 Annual Scientific Meeting in Charlotte, live from the Charlotte Convention Center. I'm so psyched. We have the amazing founder of Food Marble, Aonghus Shortt, who's going to tell us all about his breath testing device for food intolerances. This is huge. He's got 2 abstracts this year at this annual scientific meeting, and I'm just going to turn it over to him, and he's going to tell us all about it. So first of all, welcome. It's so great to meet you in person. We've talked several times on Zoom over the last year, so it's so great to see our friend from across the way.
Yeah. Well, it's great to be in person with everyone, and really appreciate you having me on the show.
Of course.
But yeah, for people listening in and watching, we've developed this. I'll hold it up here. This is actually our second generation medical device. So we just launched this in July, and so this is to help clinicians to be able, working with their patients, to be able to overcome some of these really challenging conditions like IBS and SIBO, where breath testing is really relevant, and they might try and work out if food intolerances could be a factor for them, or bacterial overgrowth. And it's a way to do those sort of traditional breath tests you can get, but do it with a device that the patient can use in the home. So it's less resources are required from the clinical perspective. And, it can also be, for a lot of people here at this show, finding different sorts of ancillary revenues as well is important. So that's a good,
Yeah, because we hear all the time the evidence is showing that food, and it seems like it would be a no-brainer, but it took a lot of years to get the evidence where food, they accept that food does impact our digestive health symptoms. So what you've designed here is really helping, instead of a patient undergoing many, many, many things to try to decide what it could be. And oftentimes with IBS, there's no diagnostic test that's going to say you have IBS. It's like, is it food? Is it biopsychosocial? So how does this work exactly?
Yeah. So I mean, that is the kind of key challenge. And, I initially experienced that with my wife, actually, where she has IBS, and that's actually the origin of the whole thing, really. And she went through really extended process and all the struggles that go with that. And so from an early stage, when I was just prototyping this device and, trying to see if it could be helpful to her, um, that this kind of gives you an idea of how it works, because she was like testing foods that she was unsure about. So she's measuring, how much, like we're measuring hydrogen on the breath. So how much hydrogen is being produced, and using that to see, is this a food I should avoid? Because if the levels go really high, that indicates that this is a food that you want to limit in your diet. But then, if the levels are really low, that indicates, oh, actually, this is something I can consume.
So that's awesome. So instead of like waiting for the symptoms and figuring out, okay, today this bothers me, you can actually use something that's medically and evidence-based to figure out, oh my God, when I eat this, it produces an excessive amount of gas.
Yes.
It's measured by the device.
Yes.
I have a way of telling my doctor, and they can help guide me on what I should be eating and not eating.
Exactly. So we can
Love it.
Yeah, we can connect the doctor with the patient's data. They can see, in response to food, or if they're doing more like conventional, they might be doing SIBO breath tests, so they can see the hydrogen levels and the methane levels as well in this device. And it's just a much easier way to because it's always complex with IBS. There's many factors, as you mentioned, and so for some people, food won't be a factor, and that's fine. They can try something else, but that's useful information to know that actually, it's not driven by food, and I can try something else.
I love it, and I love the story of how you founded the company based on your wife. It's always when you have a problem and you're trying to find a solution. What a great husband you are! but now we're at a scientific conference, and I don't want to overlook the fact that you have 2 scientific
Yes.
abstracts, and people always wonder, is this some gimmick? Is it no? And we're like, no, this is the real deal. This device is the real deal, and you're going to tell us why with your 2 abstracts. So I'll let you sum it up really quickly. What
Sure.
the main points for your abstracts were.
Sure. So this morning we had a poster that was it was about the use of a particular type of prebiotic. So it's a kind of a next generation prebiotic.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So this is a human milk oligosaccharide, but the idea being, you can use breath to see are these working? So for because prebiotics are just food for the gut microbiome. So if you're seeing when you consume it that your gut, like your microbes, are using the prebiotic, you're going to see gases on the breath. So we can measure them.
Interesting.
So it's kind of flipping it on its head, where you want to see.
I was going to say that's a good thing. So it's like you're thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, it's doing its thing, because a prebiotic. Not everyone needs a prebiotic. So that's the other thing. But that's for another podcast. But what you're saying is you're actually seeing the positive impact.
Yes, yeah. So it's kind of like for people where a prebiotic could be something that could be beneficial, you want to see, well, is this one working for this person? Is this one working? What sort of dosage would make sense given this, what the symptoms this person has or what stage they're at. So that was the first one.
So the device measures that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so we presented that this morning, and then tomorrow we've got another poster. This is actually coming out of a trial. It's just completed now, actually, out in Johns Hopkins.
Right.
And it's a total of 70 patients, and
Wow, that's great.
yeah,
Impressive.
and we, because this is a device you can use in the home, it's the first time where it's really it's possible to be able to do day-to-day breath tests. So after you eat, real meals. So not like, often you've got like an artificial, like some sort of liquid you drink, and that's
This is real life. So it's not really disrupting your daily life and how you eat. It's just you do a little extra at the end of your meal, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So this is for people who are suspected of SIBO, so small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And so we wanted to see where, could those day-to-day breath tests, could the levels we were seeing and some of the other data, could that predict who is going to respond positively to the conventional SIBO medication? So we were people were going through, they were doing the conventional sort of SIBO breath test, but then we were also doing the day-to-day stuff. And the people who were treated and responded positively, so that their symptoms improved, we could see, what factors could we have measured in advance to predict who are the people we should have given the antibiotic to in this case.
I love it because you just don't want to be giving antibiotics to everybody to see if it works or not.
Yeah.
So I think this is groundbreaking.
Thank you.
I think that it's really groundbreaking because it's really going to help. And there's a lot of work going on in the SIBO space.
Yes.
Everyone's trying to figure out that magic formula
Yes.
to really calm down what's happening as related to the gut there.
Yep.
And your device, it sounds like, can help be a tool for the providers to really understand what patients should be prescribed that medication.
Exactly. And that's the vision, because as you say, the use of antibiotics, I mean, they're costly, they're not always covered by insurance, and
Yes.
but
And we don't want to do any more damage to the gut microbiome than we need to if we don't need to destroy the good bugs, trying to get the bad bugs.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're trying to build up a healthy community there. So sometimes antibiotics aren't the right thing. So yeah, just picking the right patients who would benefit. So that post is on between 10 and 12 tomorrow.
That's exciting. So I know we got to wrap this up. You're busy. You got a line at your booth there. So let's just how can, I guess, providers and patients, what comes first? Do you need a prescription for this?
Well, so it's for patients coming into providers, once they're set up to use our system, we can provide them with the devices so they can hand them out and show the patient in person. We can also send them directly to the patient. So, because in a lot of cases, you have practices that are remote, they might be in rural areas, and it's just helpful to be able to, ship it directly to the patient, and they can do the testing from the home. But yeah, there's a lot of ways it can be done. And but I'd encourage people to check out foodmarvel.com.
Foodmarvel.com.
And if they'd like to know more, they can fill in the form there, and we'd be glad to get in touch and help.
This is, it's been a while since we talked on Zoom, and you've come a long way. I think you were just releasing the second iteration. I'm so proud of you guys.
Thank you.
I'm a big fan of this type of innovation in GI, and I look forward to hearing more about what's coming down the pipe for you guys.
Thank you
Thanks
very
for
much.
joining me.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Gastro Girl podcast. For more information and resources, please visit gastrogirl.com. Do you have a question for Gastro Girl? Please email podcast@gastrogirl.com. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in the Gastro Girl podcast are not a substitute for medical advice from your healthcare professional. Please consult a licensed clinician in your state regarding all matters related to your health.